Journey IFC strives to create safe spaces to worship God. Know that you are welcome just as you are, regardless of religious background or lack thereof, skin color, political affiliation, sexuality, age, culture, or any other label you own or society throws on you. You are welcomed and celebrated here just as you are.
Anyway, I'm going to move on from that to our reading for today, which comes from Mark chapter 5. Jesus has left the wilderness and is now doing his work of preaching, teaching, and healing, and that's what he does best. Here we go. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue named Jairus came, and when he saw him, fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So he went with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. While he was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing that, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When he entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but only sleeping." And they laughed at him. Then he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about. She was 12 years old. At this, they were overcome with amazement. He strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat.
Thank you, John. And thank you to all the people who are wrestling with technology. I wish we could heal that today. That's what needs to be healed. Let's take another deep breath in. Let's take a deep breath in. Now, today our story comes from the Gospel of Mark, the Jesus story called Mark chapter 5. And it's kind of a weird story because it comes in chunks. And right now we're in our Other Duties as Needed series, where we're talking about the different roles that Jesus fulfilled when he was here on earth, working around. And today is all about healing. But Jesus did a lot of stuff. And in the Gospel of Mark, it seems that Jesus is constantly working. Talk about burnout. This guy's experiencing it. Because in the middle of him healing one thing, he's being sent another place. And as soon as he gets done with one thing, it's the next and the next. And for a little bit of context and some crazy job he had to do, right before this, he met a guy that had a demon, and the demon's name was Legion, and he gets the demon and he sends it into this group of pigs that's running by, and he gets the pigs to run off a cliff, and they fall in the water and they drown. It's dark, it's twisted, it's probably not the work Jesus thought he was going to do. Just like there's probably a lot of parts of our job that we don't expect to do. But I really don't think I would ever expect to send a demon into some pigs and make them drown. So that comes directly before this. So Jesus is coming off of this weird moment, and he's on a boat, and he comes to the shore, and there's this great crowd around him. There's always a great crowd around him because he's doing crazy stuff. He's healing, he's preaching, he's teaching. People are drawn to him. So when he gets there, it's probably hard to get off the boat because there's so many people there. And there's a guy who seems to be like elbowing his way forward, trying to get to Jesus. And he finally gets up there, and we learn that his name is Jairus, and it says that he's a synagogue leader. So this means he's like a top dude, he's an official guy, someone that wouldn't be elbowing their way through the crowd, falling at Jesus' feet, but that's what he does. He's so desperate because he's heard this guy, Jesus, is doing this crazy stuff, and although he's a synagogue leader, he just has to hold on to hope for something because his daughter's about to die. And so he goes to Jesus and he falls down at his feet and he starts begging him. He says, "My daughter is at death's door. Can you please come home with me and just lay your hands on her so that she can be healed and that maybe she can live a little bit longer?" Jesus, intrigued by this, just goes. He just picks up and he goes. And that's kind of what Jesus does. He just kind of follows the next right thing. And I love that about him. He doesn't make a big plan. It doesn't seem calculated. He just goes to where there's an interest, where there's a need. And I don't even know if he knows that he can heal her or not. He just knows that he wants to go with this man. And so this is where we have another break in our story, because as they're traveling to get to this young girl at Jairus' home, this woman comes up to Jesus, and she's been hemorrhaging for 12 years, and she goes up to him and he touches his cloak, and she's healed, and it's a great story, but we're going to cover that another week, so we're just going to hold on to that. I just want to say it, just to remember that Jesus, on his way to heal someone else, got stopped and had to heal this woman. It's constant work for him. It's these other duties as needed. So in the middle of him healing this woman that comes and touches him, he sets off. He goes and he finally gets closer to the house of Jairus, and this group of people come up to them and they say Jairus. They don't talk to Jesus, they talk to Jairus. They say, "Hey, your daughter's already dead. Give up. Why are you troubling this teacher? Let him go." And you know Jairus just has to be defeated, deflated, and just beaten down by that. He was so close, and then he hears that his daughter is dead, and he wasn't even there when she died. But Jesus overhears this because he's probably standing right there, and although they're not talking to him, he intercedes, and he doesn't talk to the crowd, he talks to Jairus, and he says, "Do not fear, only believe." And I think Jesus was saying that to Jairus because he thinks his daughter's dying, but I think Jesus was saying a little bit of that to himself. Do not fear, believe. I don't think anyone knew what was about to happen next. And so Jesus, they get closer. They leave this crowd and they say, "No one can follow." All along, Jesus is saying, "Stop following me. There are too many people. I know I'm doing these crazy things. I need to do the work. I can't have this crowd." And so he limits who can follow, and it's his 3 disciples, his friends, the people that are doing the work with him, Peter, James, and John. And he also brings the parents of the daughter, the mom and the dad. And as they get closer to the room, they see this group of people that are communally, wailing and crying, and in this time they had professional mourners. So these were people that were trained in the art of lamentation. And so they would go and they would cry and they would sing dirges and they would express feelings and they would just show up for the family so that they could mourn as well. So this means that their funeral procession has started. The girl is dead, the professionals are there, they know what they're doing. And Jesus comes up and he says, "Why are you making all this commotion and weeping? The girl's not dead, she's just asleep." And these professional mourners turn real fast. They go from crying and weeping to laughing. And they're pointing fingers at Jesus and they're ridiculing him and they're making fun of him. She's not dead, she's sleeping. What does this guy think he is? But Jesus banishes these people. He sends them away, doesn't have time for them. He sends these professionals out and he goes even closer. He goes into the room where the girl is laying, supposedly dead. And he brings his 3 friends and the parents of the girl. And Jesus goes up to this little girl laying in the bed, and he takes her by the hand. And Natalie said something in our prayer earlier about holding hands and that feeling of touch. That's what Jesus does. He gets right up there and he touches her. He's not scared of death. This is something that in this time would have made you unclean to touch a dead person. But he goes and he takes her hand and he says, "Talitha kum." The thing about Talitha kum is that this is in Aramaic. So this is Jesus' native tongue. And so when he says this, he's breaking tradition, he's breaking the social order, and he's going to what is most comfortable to his heart. It's like when my mom would call me sweet baby Jacob growing up. That's what he's saying. It's a term of endearment. He's like little girl, and he says it in the language closest to his heart. And he says, little girl, get up, arise. And the crazy thing is, she gets up. This girl that was once dead arises from the dead. And we're told that she's 12 years old, and everyone there is amazed. But then Jesus says, tell no one about what you saw here. And then he says, feed her. And this is proof that if you feed her, that she really is resurrected. You'll see she needs to eat. She's a real human. Give her some food. She probably needs it. As I heard the do not tell them, I started wondering, why not? Why did Jesus want to keep this healing a secret? This was an awesome thing. Was it him trying to clarify what his job really was? Was he afraid people were going to get his job duties mixed up? Do you think people were going to confuse the situation and add to the story and make it something it was not? I don't know. Or maybe Jesus thought that, you know what, they don't have the full picture yet. I don't want them to spread the word until they understand what I'm really about. Because it's not just about resurrection. At the end of my story comes a cross and a crucifixion. And maybe he's saying, don't tell everyone because there'll come a time when they really will get it. Or maybe he was scared he couldn't do it again if someone asked. If the word spread around, maybe he wouldn't be able to save the next young child. Or maybe he wanted to keep this moment private and personal. I don't know what it was, but Jesus says, do not tell anyone what happened here. And throughout the Gospel of Mark, this is pretty common. They call it the Messianic Secret. Messianic, the Messiah, the anointed one, the chosen one. Jesus came and said, don't tell anyone. I don't want people to get this mixed up because it looks different than what they think, and people are going to get mad at me for doing what I do. And that's what happens, and that's what gets him killed, and that's probably also why he wasn't telling everyone. But Jesus says there'll come a time when people will understand, but right now, hold this close to your heart. But the thing is, the word was spreading faster than Jesus could stop it. That's why the crowds were following him. That's why they knew what he was doing. He was healing people from the dead. Jesus was really doing it. It makes me wonder, is this his greatest miracle? Bringing people back from the dead. As I read the story, I was like, yeah, this is a wonderful story. This girl is healed and she's saved. It's awesome. Yay, God. Yay, Jesus. It worked. But I started to think, what happens when we get sick? What happens when our loved one gets sick? Our dogs, our pets, our friends, our neighbors. What happens when we get to a point where we're asking the question, will I be healed? And knowing how life goes, healing doesn't always happen the way we plan it. We can pray for healing and we can hope for one thing, but often that healing comes in another. It's not always as easy as saying, arise, get up and walk, give her some food. It's much more complex than that. What happens in our lives when the healing doesn't come as we expected? It makes me wonder, are our prayers answered in these times? Does God hear us? Maybe, I don't know. Or maybe it's a reorientation. Maybe we need to see, maybe it's God's answering our prayers, but maybe God is answering our prayers in a different way. Maybe there's a different kind of healing that we just don't understand. Maybe it's not all about body, about life or death. I remember in middle school, we had a family friend named Bev who got diagnosed with breast cancer. And every day we had the moment of silence before school. And so we'd have the moment of silence and, the Pledge of Allegiance and all the weird nationalist things we do in America. But in this moment of silence, I would pray every day, God, please heal Bev from cancer. And I did it every day. And I felt so invested and I wanted God to answer this one prayer. And I didn't know if it was going to work. But a couple of months later, she had beat cancer. And I was so happy. I was like, God did it. She survived. We did it. But as the years went on, she got cancer again. And by the time I was in college, she got really sick, and she eventually passed away. And I remember being so mad. I remember thinking, God, you answered my prayers back then. You healed her then. What happened? But my mom, who was grieving at the time, had the greatest wisdom, I think, in that moment. She said, God gave us 8 extra years with Bev. And it made me think healing isn't about our bodies. It's much greater than that. It's beyond that. And this story, although it's great and wonderful that the little girl survived, and I want to celebrate that, I just keep thinking, what if God is healing something different in us? What if the greatest thing, this greatest miracle isn't physical, but spiritual and emotional? What if it gets down to some core beneath just the body? Because what happens if the girl doesn't get up? Would Jesus' work been less successful? Would he have failed his job duties? It makes me wonder, where are the stories of the times when the people weren't healed successfully? Why weren't those passed down? But as I sit with this story, I remember that healing really is possible. And I think all of us have probably experienced that. I know there's health concerns in this community right now that without modern medicine would not be healed. Things are happening. So we read the story and we can celebrate that healing is real. But I think we have to look at it in a more nuanced way. Maybe healing isn't about just our bodies. Maybe it's a little more holistic. Maybe God's doing work in our mind, in our soul, in our spirits, in our beings. Last week, Vicki said in our book study, she talked about, I was healed from the fear of being sick. And maybe that's what it's about. It's being healed from the fear of death. Seeing healing as something different. And so today, my prayer for all of us is for healing. Because I pray knowing that God can do it, that God can really heal people, and that God hears our prayers and answers them, and it may look different than we intend, but God can do it. But I also pray that we can have enough grace to know that healing can look a little different. So I'll invite Gil to come forward too, and what we're going to do is we invite you to come forward and receive a blessing. It's a blessing of healing. And so we invite you to come forward. If there's something that you need specific prayers for, that you want healed, it can be in mind, body, spirit, whatever, you can ask that for us and we can pray with you. Or you can come up and just get a mark on your forehead. If you're weirded out by the germs of that, know that it's okay to just say, I don't want to be touched, but I would like a prayer or a blessing. That's okay too. We want to respect that boundary. I want to note that this oil here is a gift. It came from Laurel Dixon, who's a journeyer, one of our distance journeyers, who was actually ordained through Journey. And this oil came from actually Bethlehem, Jerusalem, I think. Jerusalem? Yeah, and it's called Rose of Sharon. And so it's blessed. It's really strong. You probably can smell it now. It's rose oil. It's going to linger with you a bit. But when my family friend Bev, whenever she had cancer, our interim pastor at that time, he did a service where he came to the church, and it was really small, it was really intimate, about this size. And we all got around her, and he marked her with rose oil, a very similar one, and we prayed for healing for her. And so that's what we are doing today, is praying for healing in all of its many nuanced ways. So come forward as you feel comfortable to either one of us, whoever sparkles at you, I guess. And we will give you a blessing. Susan, if you could play some music for us. Today our blessing is going to look a little different. The thing about doing blessings like this, you don't have to be a pastor to bless people. We just wanted to do that as a gift to you. The best thing is that we can always bless each other, that we can do that in our daily lives, when we see each other, when we run into each other. That's something we can do. And our last fully on Zoom service a couple weeks ago, we did an activity where we all typed a blessing into the chat. We said 3, 2, 1 and all sent it, and we got to read each other's blessings. And so what I want you to do as our blessing today, and as the music starts playing as we leave, I want you to offer a word of blessing to just the people as you're gathering, as you normally do. Just offer a word of peace, of healing, of blessing. And that's our Sunday. So go in peace. Amen.